Guest today. We're going to talk some Alabama Crimson Tide basketball. He does an outstanding job. He interns for Bama Central, which is a Fan Nation, part of the Sports Illustrated network. He also does a nice job as the sports editor for the Crimson White. And, of course, you can follow him on Twitter as well. He does an outstanding job, and I've been able to connect with him covering Alabama Crimson Tide basketball, and basically that's how we connected via social media. He's done an outstanding job covering the Alabama Crimson Tide, and we're going to try to talk some Alabama Crimson Tide basketball with him today, and that is going to be Blake Byler. Blake Byler is going to join us. He is going to graduate next year from the University of Alabama, but he is, as we said, the sports editor for the Crimson White, an intern for Bama Central, which is part of Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated, and he also co-hosts, a daily podcast called the Blue Collar Unplugged, which is, of course, dedicated to the Alabama Crimson Tide basketball program, and it's part of the umbrella of Crimson Crossover, and they do a great job. We've had Matt Landry on the show, who's basically their recruiting analyst, and he did a great segment with us, and we've been able to talk some Alabama Crimson Tide basketball, and we are hoping to get Blake on with us just for a few minutes to talk some Crimson Tide basketball on this Monday here on the Blitz Sports Radio. But this is the Recruiting Blitz. I am D Squared, Drew DeArmond, and we are going to bring you this conversation right now with Blake. And Blake's been good enough and patient enough to wait for us to get through our technical issues. And now we have Blake Byler on the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline here live from Bill Penny Toyota. Blake, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, Drew. How are you?
We're doing well, man. Thanks for hanging. Your thoughts on this 108-59 win for Alabama over Georgia? I will say the little bit of adversity this team has faced, and again, they're 23-4 overall, 13-1 in the SEC. They have come back with a vengeance from losses every time. This happened for the fourth time as they took it out on Mike White in Georgia and systematically dismantled them, playing at a very, very high level. What stood out to you the most about the performance?
Yeah, well, you kind of mentioned it from the start. It's just been the way that this team has been able to rebound from losses. And you look at the Oklahoma loss that they took about 3 weeks ago, and they come out and they beat Vanderbilt by 57 right after that. And then this weekend, they suffer the loss to Tennessee, and then they come out and it's a 49-point win over Georgia. And after the game, Nate Oates really talked about how this team has a way about them where they're able to figure out the things that are going wrong and fix them very quickly. And they care a lot about fixing those things. And I think we can see that really from the opening tip against Georgia. Alabama came out with a huge fire about them. They were ready to go from the jump. They attacked Georgia hard at the beginning of the game, which led to, I believe it was like an 18-6 lead at the under-16 timeout. And just the way that they were able to attack and come out strong really led to an easy victory for Alabama.
He really did, and I thought Nate Oates was pretty forthcoming in his comments that what they looked to do coming out was Tennessee did a great job of limiting, Mark Sears in the last game. Brandon Miller got a double-double with 15 and 10, but he had to work for every point. I think they really looked to get Mark off early, and then Brandon was able to get going, and they just buried Georgia early.
Yes, Oates talked about wanting to get something running for Mark at the beginning of the game, and I believe the first play that they ran was to get Sears an open three-pointer. He just had 2 points against Tennessee on 1 for 6 shooting, and he's been Alabama's second leading scorer for the entire season. And so they wanted to get him going. He made his first 5 threes against Georgia, and when he's hitting like that, it's hard for any team to beat Alabama. And so it was good that they were able to get him going, and then the point you mentioned about Brandon Miller, I thought he looked a lot more aggressive against Georgia than he had in the first half and many of the games this season. A lot of times we've seen him kind of feel his way out through the first half and kind of attack more in the second half. But I felt like he came out aggressive. He looked like he was ready to go after what was somewhat of a frustrating game for him against Tennessee with the way that they guarded him. I think he was ready to shake loose and get going early.
There's no doubt about that. I think there's no question he wanted to get out and get going. And then speaking of that, the development of this team is what I have been really impressed with as far as the depth. And the depth showed up against Georgia, no question about it. And the way the rotations kind of evolved because, we've seen Rylan Griffin assert himself and become a big part of it. Namari Burnett since he came back. But I thought we saw some signs from Dom Welch. He had 8 points, and I mentioned that to Nate Oates. I know this is his last year of college basketball. Getting injured really set him back, but he's a guy that scored a ton of points at St. Bonaventure. He's a three-point shooter, really good defender, and if they can start getting some more out of him, and then with what Nick Pringle did, Nick Pringle was the Hard Hat Award winner, 19 and 12, I believe he had, and he plays with such energy. Now, I know early in the season they weren't happy with his defense, and he was having to learn how to play on this level, but if you've got a Nick Pringle with that kind of freakish athleticism that's starting to get comfortable, Blake, I know he's taking some minutes away from Noah Gurley, but I think this team is becoming deeper and more dangerous. What are your thoughts?
No, I absolutely agree. The depth has been very apparent all season, and we've seen that even as players have gone down with injury, and you've had other players step up. To the Dom Welch point, you're right. He was a 12-point-a-game guy at St. Bonaventure last year. Over 4 years there, he shot 38% from three for his career. He hasn't shot the ball that well this season. I think, like you said, the calf injury that he dealt with for much of the beginning of the year has hindered him a little bit. But, man, if Alabama can get him going, he scored 8 points against Georgia. That's just another weapon that Alabama has in their arsenal. Off that bench, that also features, like you said, Rylan Griffin, a guy who scored double digits in, I think it's like 5 of 7 games or something like that. You have a former McDonald's All-American in Namari Burnett, and those are 3 wings or kind of bigger guards that can play good defense and really provide a lot of depth for Alabama whenever you need to give guys like Sears or Bradley or even Brandon Miller a break on the bench. And then to the point about Nick Pringle, he was excellent against Georgia. I believe he had 19 points, 12 rebounds. Just his athleticism and the motor he plays with is the exact kind of guy that Nate Oates loves. Truly a blue-collar player. He loves to make the hustle plays. He brings high energy. His energy role reminds me a little bit of Jawan Gary from a year ago, but Pringle has much more athleticism and a bit of a different role. Honestly, reminds me a little bit of a younger Dante Hall with the way that he is able to jump out of the gym, finish lobs. I think as he continues to grow and as his defense gets better, because some of his defensive positioning, he's been out of position a couple times on some rotations and rim protecting, and Oates talked about that after the game. But as he improves in that area, he can be a massive piece and just another huge depth piece for this Alabama team.
Yeah, and I thought, too, even though I know he didn't score like he did in the previous game, but I thought Jaden Bradley in 14 minutes, he had 7 assists and no turnovers, and he's an old-school point guard anyway. He certainly can score and get downhill. His strength is, getting to the foul line and finishing at the rim. He wasn't able to get in the scoring column, Blake, but 7 assists, and I thought Quinterly, Javon, after having a kind of a burn-the-tape game against Tennessee where he was turning the ball over too much and struggling, he didn't score big either. He hit 1 3, but I thought their efficiency and their handling of the basketball and taking care of it was much better against Georgia.
Yeah, I agree. To Bradley's point, I think he kind of dealt with what a lot of people would call like the freshman wall, so to speak, at the end of January. And I felt like really since probably the Florida game, he's been excellent. He was amazing against Auburn with his ability to finish at the rim around some really impressive rim protectors with Dylan Carville and Jedi Broom. Then I think against Tennessee, he was probably the most mature Alabama point guard in terms of dealing with the pressure that Kai Ziegler and the Tennessee defense was able to put on Alabama. And then against Georgia, he had 7 assists. He didn't score. And the fact that Alabama was able to score 108 points while their 4th leading scorer in Bradley didn't score a point, he was just dishing out assists. That's another testament to the depth of this Alabama team. Javon Quinterly definitely bounced back in a big way. He cut his turnovers down, get 6 against Tennessee. Like you said, kind of a burn-the-tape game. But he came back, I believe he had 6 assists. He had a couple nice lobs to Pringle, who we were talking about earlier. When both of those guys are leaning more into their facilitating roles, it just opens everything up for all of the other scorers that this Alabama team has, and they have a lot of guys that can score and be able to benefit from guys that can facilitate like Bradley and Clearly.
And I know you mentioned it in your column for SI.com and of course Bama Central, part of the Fan Nation Network. But as Coach Oates pointed out too, while Alabama scored 108, 54 in each half, their defensive efficiency numbers are even better than the offense.
Yes, their defensive efficiency numbers actually now, according to KenPom, they rank third in defensive efficiency in the country, which matches their rank that the 2021 team with Herb Jones ended up being by the end of the season. And so I think the defense of this Alabama team is one of the most underrated aspects of it, because you have Brandon Miller, you have the high volume shooting that draws all of the eyes and all of the attention, but really the reason this Alabama team is so good is the way that they can defend and the way that they can guard. They've gone through 14 SEC games now without allowing 70 points to an SEC opponent. And I don't know the numbers on the last time that's happened, but they have a chance to go the entire SEC schedule without giving up 70 to an SEC team, which is honestly unheard of. Just the way that this team has, they have a ton of length. You have, from the 3-4-5, you have 6'9" Brandon Miller, 6'10" Noah Cloudy, 7 foot Charles Bediako, who has been excellent recently. Then you go to the bench and you have guys who are long and who have a high motor and love to defend, like Damari Burnett, Rylan Griffin, Dom Welch, guys we've talked about earlier, and even some of the smaller guys that don't have as much length, Mark Sears and Javon Quinterly. You can just see the effort that they have on the defensive end, and even if you don't necessarily have the tools to be a rangy, long defender, sometimes just having that effort and being able to put that forth, for one, keeps you on the floor on a NATO's coach team, but definitely helps the team be as good of a defense as Alabama has had this year.
We're talking to Blake Byler, as we said. He does a great job as the sports editor of the Crimson White. Also does contributes and is interning with the Bama Central, and that is the part of the Fan Nation Network. It's Sports Illustrated that he writes and covers this Alabama Crimson Tide basketball team. Some interesting matchups. 4 games left, Blake. Now, the Alabama didn't get the help they were hoping from Missouri at home against Texas A&M, so Buzz Williams' team still only a game back. Alabama comfortably ahead of Tennessee and Kentucky, though, at 9-5. So really it's become a 2-team race to the end for the regular season SEC title.
It has, and Alabama has luckily a favorable schedule leading into that regular season finale when they do go to College Station to play Texas A&M. They have South Carolina this week on Wednesday, and there's not too much to say about South Carolina. They've been one of the bottom dwelling SEC teams, but then kind of a tough 2-game stretch with Arkansas and Auburn, but luckily for Alabama, they're both home games. And Alabama has been absolutely unreal at home, winning, I think, 3 games by 40, or maybe 4 games by 40 over the course of the season. So those 2 games being at home certainly benefits Alabama. When it comes to Texas A&M, Alabama definitely needs a little help to try to avoid that last game being for the 1 seed in the SEC tournament. I'm sure they'd like Texas A&M to drop one before then. A&M has Tennessee this week, which they're at home, so that's going to be a very interesting game on Tuesday night. And then they go to Mississippi State, who has given some teams some trouble lately. And so Texas A&M certainly has somewhat of a challenging week. If A&M drops one, you could see Alabama clinch the SEC regular season at home against Auburn, which I'm sure would be a sight to see for a lot of Alabama fans.
Yeah, no doubt. We're talking to Blake Byler as he's talking some Alabama headed down the stretch of this SEC schedule. Blake, in your mind, what's going to be the key for Alabama winning the SEC down the stretch? To me, I think they're probably going to need a little help with A&M. I would like to see the Auburn game, the last home game, Wednesday, March the 1st, with them to have a chance to win it outright. Now, of course, they could clinch at least a tie, but I like their chances on the road at South Carolina. South Carolina's been struggling, certainly, and this Alabama team, for the most part, has played very well on the road. Then you got the 2 big home games, though. Arkansas coming in. They've been a little schizophrenic, but they've got Nick Smith back. He's played a little bit. They had a nice win over Florida. They're talented, but I like Alabama's chances at home. This team has played very well at home in conference play, and then you've got Auburn, which should be an electric crowd.
Absolutely. I don't think I'd be going out on a limb to say that Alabama's better than every team left on their schedule. But honestly, the key for Alabama is going to be staying focused and locked in and being able to take care of business in the games that they need to. Everyone has that last Texas A&M game circled, and that's going to be a huge game if it does end up being A&M's last chance of sharing the regular season title. But if Alabama can take care of business, if they can stay locked in until then, if they can play the way that they're supposed to play and that we're used to seeing them play, then that game is going to be a huge one on March 4th. It's going to be a loud crowd in Reed Arena and College Station, but the chances are that Alabama will be able to win out. I think they definitely have the capabilities to, but that last game is definitely going to be a tough one.
Absolutely, Blake, no doubt about it. Well, again, we appreciate you for joining us and talking some Alabama Crimson Tide basketball today. Real quickly, what are your thoughts on the matchup with South Carolina coming up on Wednesday?
Well, I think South Carolina, they're sitting at, 3-11 in the SEC. They have not won a ton of games this season, but they have won 2 of their last 3 with wins coming against Ole Miss and LSU. They do have a really good power forward in G.G. Jackson, a projected potential lottery pick. But I honestly think Alabama's just too good of a team, and I think they're just going to overwhelm South Carolina, honestly, on both sides of the floor. I expect Alabama to get a win, likely a double-digit win, but then again, it's also college basketball. So if Alabama doesn't show up, anything can happen, but I'm expecting Alabama to roll pretty easily on Wednesday night.
Well, Blake, we appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us to talk some Crimson Tide basketball, man. Continue the great work with the Crimson White and what you've done covering Crimson Tide basketball. Certainly, I know you've still got some time as a student left at the university. You're going to graduate in the spring of 2024. But you're doing a great job rising up the media business. You do a great job with Bama Central and Fan Nation, and also you do a really good job with your daily podcast with the Crimson Crossover. We've enjoyed that as well. Keep up the good work, and don't forget, everybody, it's the Blue Collar Unplugged podcast, and let everybody know they can connect with that and can read your work.
Yes, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at BlakeByler45, and then you can find my work at thecrimsonwhite.com, where I'm the sports editor, and also at BamaCentral.com, where I've been interning and been able to cover this Alabama team, this Alabama basketball team this season. I do have a podcast with some friends where we discuss Alabama basketball. We have weekly episodes. It's titled Blue Collar Unplugged. You can find that podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at BCU Podcasts.
All right, Blake, we appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. We're going to go on a break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Recruiting Blitz on this Monday from Bill Penny Toyota.
Are you in the market for a recreational vehicle? Do you want to get out and see more of this beautiful country? Well, imagine hearing the laughter of your little ones enjoying gooey s'mores by a cozy campfire and making lasting memories with your friends and family from the comfort of a new camper. We can make your dreams come true at Hall's RV. With over 15 years in the camping business, we know how to get our customers into the perfect camper. We have several models and floor plans here for you to choose from, both new and used. We're family owned and operated with fantastic deals and great service. Everyone wants to work with people they can trust, so come on down to Hall's RV and get the deal of a lifetime. We'll treat you right and get you on the road in the camper of your dreams. Visit us on Highway 431 in Albertville. Hall's RVs, where we sell fun. Or see us on the web at www.hallsrvsales.com.
I'm attorney Gary Lackey. You know, you'll hear people say we're like a family, but here at the Lackey Law Firm, that's really true, not just a saying.
I'm Justin Lackey. With my father and my sister, we have a special connection to each other.
I'm Jennifer Lackey. At the Lackey Law Firm, when we take on your case, you become part of our family. You really do.
And we'll always do whatever it takes to get everything you deserve.
If you're injured, you worry about getting well, not about paperwork or insurance companies or figuring out how to get to your lawyer's office. I'll come to you.
We worry about your case so you don't have to.
When you've been injured, we know that your case is probably the biggest thing going on in your life. More important than almost anything else.
And it's important to us too, for one simple reason. Family takes care of each other, and at the Lackey Law Firm, we'll take care of you.
The Lackey Law Firm. The Lackey Law Family. 1-800-4-RIGHTS.
No representation is made that the quality of the legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers.
Are you tired of chasing a roofing contractor to show up on time, or even show up at all? I'm Sam Fleming with Fleming Roofing and Restoration. Our motto at Fleming Roofing is we show up. Our goal at Fleming Roofing is to provide the reliable customer service that you deserve, and we have the resources to meet all of your roofing needs: residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. We are manufacturer certified for roof coatings, single-ply membranes, and asphalt shingles. Whenever you need a roofing professional you can count on, call Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We are committed to finding a solution that meets your needs. We don't have quotas or heavy-handed sales tactics. Fleming Roofing, we have expert experience. We show up. Free estimates, residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. Check us out at FlemingHSV.com. FlemingHSV.com. When you need a quick response, it's Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We show up.
Any Jane Doe can tell you that Geico could help you save. But since money talks, we just ask the savings instead.
Greetings and some salutations. I'm Jane's Money, and I never knew my self-worth until Jane switched her car insurance at Geico.com. Those 15 minutes built me up to real savings. Geico's been helping customers save money like me for over 75 years. So take that to the bank. And namaste.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Philly Toyota. This is D-Squared Duty Armin. So we've got some technical issues with today's show. We've been doing the best we can here, but we want to thank Blake Byler for joining us, talking Crimson Tide basketball. And of course, as we told you, he is part of Fan Nation, part of Bama Central, and also the sports editor right now of the Crimson White. The young man is a junior at the University of Alabama and will be graduating next spring in 2024. So we appreciate him so much for giving us some of his time. But he does a great job. If you follow him on Twitter, of covering the University of Alabama basketball program. He is part of the Blue Collar Unplugged podcast as well. But you can follow him on Twitter at Blake Byler, BYLER 45. And if you follow him, you can definitely get some quality Alabama basketball info. He does a great job, covers each home game for the Crimson Tide as well. And wanted to give him a shot to come on here and talk some Crimson Tide hoops, and we appreciate him for giving us some of his time out of his busy schedule. We've just got a couple of minutes left in this show. It was an abbreviated one today, but we want to give a shout out to Bill Penny Toyota. We thank them for allowing us to be here and bring you this conversation. We also wanted to tell you as well, there's a lot of high school basketball action that is coming up today. At Wallace State especially. We've got a lot of local teams that are going to take the floor, starting already the Mars Hill ladies taking on Holly Pond this morning at 9 a.m. as we started this show. 10:30 later today, we're going to have some local flavor as Mars Hill going to take on Whitesburg Christian Academy. They're trying to make history, make their first Elite Eight ever in school history. Then at noon, the Priceville Lady Bulldogs going to take on St. John Paul and Kyle Overstreet. That's a big game at 12 p.m. And then at 1:30, the Haleyville Lions against Ronnie Stapler's Westminster Christian Wildcats. And then at 3, the Good Hope Lady Raiders. The Red Raiders are going to take on the Dessler Tigers in Janakillen at 3. And then 4:30, West Morgan, led by Carson Muse. They will take on the Dessler Tigers. They have an outstanding program as well. Pleasant Grove's ladies take on East Limestone, and then Fairfield against Russellville, and that will be your lineup over at Wallace State Hanceville, and there'll be a lot of local action and local flavor there, and we look forward to that, no question about it. And earlier on Talking Ball, we had Coach Chris Latch and Christian Swears on the show to preview Huntsville and Spain Park. Huntsville and Spain Park will be the 7A regional final, the Elite 8 matchup that you'll hear on 97.7 The Zone tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, don't forget the Buckhorn Bucks at 10:45 from Wallace State. The Bandyman Dale Lowry, Captain Cool will bring you Buckhorn, and they will be taking on the number 1 team in the state, Pinson Valley Indians, ranked in the top 30 in the country. And don't forget later today as well, over at on Monday at Jacksonville State, more of our local action, as you will have 3A girls Susan Moore and Glencoe. That is ongoing. And then Robbie Coker and Plainview take on Glencoe's boys at 10:30. And then Plainview and Ohatchee in ladies action. That will be that take place at noon. And then at 1:30, Geraldine and Piedmont and the other 3A boys. And then 1A girls semifinal, Spring Garden and Winterboro will be today at 3 at Jacksonville State. 4:30, the 1A boys, Skyline and Winterboro Skyline. Both the boys and girls making another trip. 6 p.m., the Skyline ladies will take on Jefferson Christian. And the last game of the day, our good friends at Oakwood Academy here in Huntsville will take on Faith 7:30 in that semifinal. So that's going to be another 1A game. So that's going to be the action for today. And then we'll talk about tomorrow's action later on. There will be a lot of action besides Huntsville High, and we'll talk about it on the Recruiting Blitz tomorrow. But we just wanted to let you guys know of all the action coming up. Today at Wallace State and at Jacksonville State. We're going to continue to monitor that. And don't forget later today, the Bandyman Billy Lowry, Captain Cool John Abraham, they're going to bring you the afternoon blitz on the Blitz Sports Radio, as they always do. This has been an abbreviated Recruiting Blitz with 3 Squared. We appreciate Blake Myler. We appreciate Bill Penny Toyota. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio.
With us today, Dr. Tracy Lowry of Best Vein Care of Huntsville.
When we evaluate a patient and they indeed have significant venous disease, most third-party payers, private insurance, Medicare, require us to treat every patient conservatively at least 90 days. Conservative treatment includes increasing ambulatory